Welcome to the Sales Director Incubator. Apologies for the technical problems this morning. We've had a first laptop collapse on us. Hopefully this one is working okay. Hazel will soon tell us if not, guys. But my name is Mike Dixon. I think as most of you probably know, I lead the sales marketing division for AXR Recruitment and Search, and joined today by Eugene Visione, who's head of sales and marketing for Birch Waite. As you know, I've been working in recruitment for a long time, and my biggest frustration is seeing careers not fully utilized, seeing people's careers narrow before they should, and people not realizing their potential. And the purpose behind the incubator is to demonstrate the myriad of pathways that you can go down to progress your career and get the most out of your decisions you make and the career conversations you have. In each session, we're going to learn about a different sales director's journey. Now, in the sixth session, Eugene is the first of our sales directors who's worked in a small to medium-sized business, and one that is not grocery dominated. In fact, Birch Waite is much more prevalent in the food service space across HoReCa, QSR, airlines, as well as grocery. And for Eugene, like Swati Prasad, who was in one of our early sessions from Unilever, his pathway into sales was not to begin in sales, it was to begin in operations. So we're going to talk a bit about that pathway and how he landed mid-career leading a sales team. Now, as usual, there's a lot of people on the call, so we're going to keep the format the same, which is the chat is open. Please ask questions as you go. We've got a number of questions to get through today at the end, but I'm more than happy to jump in as the session continues. And we can answer your questions as we go. So let's get into it, Eugene. The life of a senior leader in a real fast growth business like Birch Waite must be pretty all-consuming. You know, what do you do to kind of create a balance?
Yeah, I think I'm lucky. I've got a wife and family, and I spend, I guess, every moment that I'm not at work, mostly with them, I suppose, and that's how I find, I guess, my balance. Enjoying every day as I can with them. I think I'm also very active. We run together, so the outdoors and staying fit is probably my other main pursuit. Play soccer on the weekends, try and do a few triathlons every year. So I think being fit and healthy is also an important aspect of my life, always has been. So yeah, that's probably the best way I achieve some kind of balance.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. As obviously we run together, but I think getting exercise into your life and having part of your routine is just so good for mental health and managing stress, I think, as well.
Yeah.
But, it was funny on the last session with Ben O'Brien at Kellogg's, we talked about an alternate career path, which for him was ski instructing, and he's hoping one day to land the dream job where he can be a leader business from Colorado and still ski. But if you weren't doing what you were doing, what would the dream job be?
Look, growing up, I always wanted to be a professional sportsman, which is completely unrealistic and impossible. It doesn't have very good longevity. I think unless you're a golfer, I think that would have been okay. I do have a former CEO that's now in sports administration, running a big sports organisation in Australia. That would be something that would be pretty cool. So maybe a bit more realistic. Something like that in sport and activity and those sorts of things.
Well, it could happen. I've done a bit of work in sport, placing people from I guess the commercial world into sport, and it's really interesting. It's very political.
Yes, which doesn't suit me at all. But I think maybe the reason for thinking that is combining a passion you have with your career. I think I'm lucky to work in food because I am definitely passionate about food. So maybe that's as far as I've got so far in terms of connecting a passion with work. So.
Awesome. I mentioned before that like Swati from Unilever, you didn't start in sales. You started in procurement and had a pretty successful career there before really joining the sales function more mid-career. Now, was that a kind of when you graduated? What was the path that you were looking at back then? I think you graduated from UCID. So what were you thinking when you were leaving uni?
What was I thinking? So no, I graduated as a chemical engineer. And I had no idea what FMCG was. And although I started in FMCG in procurement, I went into engineering. So as a consulting engineer, design engineer, so very technical, behind a screen, designing oil and gas drilling rigs and things like that. So that was how I started. But I joined that always knowing that I was going to go into project management. I wasn't technical. I early on in my university days and career, I realised people were what I was good at, not numbers. So I went into project management very soon after joining that technical firm, and then I went into project management. But that similarly, what happened was you get sent off on a project and not heard or spoken to for a year or two, and then you come back, wait for the next one, and off you go again. And although there was some satisfaction in seeing a building built, you weren't really involved in the organisation. Whereas I had friends and peers that were in FMCG, living this fast-paced life, really making a difference and or an impact in their company, and I thought that's the place for me. And I thought, how do I get into FMCG? And an opportunity came up in procurement, which is very similar to project management, I thought, and it proved to be the case, and that was my way in. So a personal connection and some lateral thinking, and that's how I got into FMCG.
Interesting.
So and as I said, just utilising the skills that you had. And I've learnt that over time, even going to sales out of procurement and things like that. You've got a good set of skills. You can leverage them even if they're not specific to that functional role. So that's my story.
Interesting. Everyone's pathway in is different. I think one of the challenges we have as an industry is with fewer direct sales teams. I think people's pathway generally has been in the past to go to territory management and move, and you can move into any part of the business from there. But it's I think it's something we have to deal with as an industry. How do we attract young talent in? Because I think it's a challenge for us. Your first sales role was actually quite a senior level, and I remember when you made that move actually, and you took on, I think it was National Sales and Marketing Manager back at Servos for coffee. Did you have a perception of what sales was before you joined, and was it different when you got in?
I had a bit of an idea, and I needed that I had to think about that concept to justify that I think I could do the job. So the way I rationalised it was I was just swapping sides of the table, the negotiating table. So in procurement, I was the customer, and I was just swapping to the other side. So I felt I had some idea these people managed me in a particular way. So they and that as an account, and I thought, well, if this is how they do it, maybe I can do it that way. So and I had some great role models in terms of when I was in procurement, dealing with account managers right up to sales and marketing directors, and I got to become quite close to a lot of some good ones, and they, I guess, were good role models, and they stayed in contact with me as I transitioned as well. So they were very helpful. So it was very similar. I think the objectives were I guess on the surface very different. Procurement, it's about cost savings and maintaining supply. Sales is about driving the top, the bottom line, and the brand. But they're still in a way very similar. If you chunk it down in terms of it's important to be planned. You're managing an account. It's a customer instead of you're managing a supplier. In procurement, you're tendering, trying to save money. In sales, you're tendering, trying to win business. And then the skills of negotiation, project management were very similar. In terms of the raw sales role. And then reality, my job was to be the leader. That wasn't any different. I was fortunate in procurement to land into senior procurement roles as well. So my job there was once again to lead, to manage, to coach, to support. Not actually to do the technical work. So and the same thing. I was only in procurement for 5 years. So I had a good memory of what it was like transitioning out of engineering and project management into procurement and going, well, how am I going to make this happen? And again, it was about leveraging the people that I worked with. I had experts in procurement. I had experts in my sales team who were very good at their job. So it was about working with them to drive that part of the business.
And do you think, because we talk a lot about broadening careers, and having moved from procurement to sales, one of the things I'm often really keen that individuals do, particularly in the sales function, is to look at other functions to get broadening experience. And do you see anybody doing that successfully? And could procurement be an option? Could salespeople actually do the reverse and take a stint in procurement?
Yeah, absolutely. Do I see it happening? I do sometimes. I think larger organisations are very good at doing it at a junior level, at the graduate programs, they move people around. But it's harder in smaller organisations. But I do see many and when you get more senior, I guess the perception it's a greater risk, so they don't do it as often. But there is many examples of it happening. I think functions that are good sideways moves for salespeople, obviously a category in marketing that's not a big risk. You're not moving too far. But going into supply chain, I think is a great move. And procurement is one of the simplest of them. As I said, you're just swapping the other side of the table, same skills, same processes, very similar. So I think it's a simple move really. And I think don't look at it as you're moving away from sales. You're learning to understand your customers better. You'll have better empathy for the way they make decisions because you've sat in their chair. I think it's a really good icebreaker when I go and meet senior procurement people. It doesn't matter, senior or junior. When they say, you worked in procurement, or you refer to an experience you went through, and they're like, oh, what, you're in procurement? And then suddenly they have this new respect for you. You're not some sleazy salesperson. you're one of them. I think it works well as well. And I have seen people, salespeople go into procurement, and then they get picked up by one of their. So it can be a stepping stone to a new company as well. So I mean that's not ideal. I don't recommend that, but but that definitely happens, and it broadens your network in terms of dealing with other salespeople in sales, unless it's an industry function. Typically, you're dealing with procurement people. But if you go into procurement, you're dealing with salespeople. So it's an avenue to broadening your network as well.
And we've another theme that we've talked about as well as broadening is this move from operational to strategic. And the interesting thing about your sales career is starting at a more senior level, you're already working at a strategic level and having to kind of lean into that challenge. How was that for you without having that direct sales experience to begin with?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, I lent on the people that I was working with. I was very lucky to have a supportive team that were happy to have, well, they seem to be, happy to have me as their leader. I had some runs on the board at the time from procurement, so I had a bit of, well, you're not some new person, and they had a little bit of respect for me. And I was very open with them, saying, I've got these skills that I'll bring, like I said, those soft skills and my procurement skills, but you guys know the market, you know the industry, you know how this works. I'm going to lean on you. And when we wrote the strategy and the plan, we did it together. I just facilitated it, and we did it together. And I think the fact that they were involved in that, that meant they owned it, and then they were willing to execute it. And it wasn't my strategy. Some person who didn't know what they're talking about coming in, they were doing it. So, and something we talked about, just you and I, is I was fortunate at the time to be doing an MBA. And not a lot of people, some people, it's a bit taboo, or some people rate MBAs, but I really felt it was at a good time in my life. As I was transitioning into this role, a more strategic role, I started doing an MBA. I just started it, so it wasn't because of this, but it meant I was learning as I was doing, and I was applying these learnings to the team, and they were a sponge. They took on with these templates, these systems that I was bringing, and going, let's do it, and they loved it. So it was a really it was a team effort, and that's how I approached it. But I also had very supportive executive team, so CEO, CFO, and sales director. They had some broad ideas of what they thought needed to change. So it was very clear at the start what I had to the long-term objective. In terms of the vision and other things, it was all about us. But it was a good time in terms of giving that opportunity to do it. So it's funny, MBAs almost feel like they come in waves of popularity. I think the credibility is pretty high actually at the moment. I do get asked when I'm recruiting senior leadership roles,
to look out for MBA candidates. I think the balance is certainly positive towards MBAs at the moment. It has been for a couple of years, so it's interesting.
Well, my view of MBAs is you don't do it to then trigger a career change. A lot of people do that. Some people use it as a gap. That's okay. But for me, it's if you can apply the learnings in your current role, that's the way you'll get the most out of it. And what it does is I think it helps you perform your role better. So then you'll get the next role if that's what you're looking for.
I agree. It's not a passport to a bigger salary or a bigger job necessarily. I think it's about being more effective in what you're doing. I completely agree. And it's actually, it should be an accelerator. That's how I see it, a catalyst. I mentioned before you're the first in this incubator series, Eugene, that's working in a smaller business. Do you think there's some particular challenges running a sales and marketing function in a smaller business compared to a larger business?
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons, and there's some similarities, but and I guess it depends on the sophistication of the organisation you join. Even if it's small, it still can be quite sophisticated. I mean, with the bigger organisations, you do often get the established systems and processes, the tools, the learning and development support, all those sorts of things. But at smaller organisations, that's not often the case. I think at Birch Waite, I've been part of the journey of developing those systems and tools, and that's been enjoyable too. So if you're happy to be a builder, not just at my level, but even amongst the team, like we're implementing a new ERP and a new CRM at the moment, and we've got BDMs involved in that are project subject matter experts. You don't often get to do that in a large organisation. They'll bring in consultants and other things like that. But so I think and then other positives and negatives. So flat structure, less layers. Positive, you get a lot more engagement with people like me or the CEO. But I guess it's a misconception so that's a positive, but it can be viewed as a negative because the misconception is you might get autonomy. It might not necessarily be the case. You'll get a lot of, because you've got, I guess, people that are more senior people that are closer to you that want to be involved.
Interesting,
So it depends. You've got to, and I think that might depend on the organisation too. But for example, that's the way we work. We're quite involved. Some people love it, some people don't. If you view it as a learning experience and a developmental experience, it's a positive. If you view it like I'm used to being left alone to just do my thing, which probably was the way I had an attitude at my last organisation. I wanted to be left alone. Then it's not a positive. So it can be, because you talk big organisations, the red tape and things. We don't have red tape, but in a sense, but everyone's involved. That's
an interesting way of putting it. And I think it's often incumbent then on, for instance, somebody who's considering possibly working for a smaller business over a large one, asking the right questions on the way in. To understand, is this going to work for me? Is this because the culture is different for every business? It's not necessarily what you expect. I think the point you made there is actually a different spin on what people might perceive.
Absolutely,
working in a smaller business.
I went in with a different view, but I think because I should focus on the positives. The business is also connected. Small businesses are often, and in my experience, the one I've joined, but it's very fast growing, fast paced, agile. We launched 150 products last year. We made the decisions what products we would launch. It's not only the CEO or myself. It's spread across the organisation. So you can make what floats my boat is making an impact. In a small organisation, a broader set of people can make an impact. And you're more broadly involved. You're not siloed. You're not only in sales. You involve yourself with operations, with innovation. I think a much more collaborative environment, and you'll learn a lot more. And I think I think it's a very enjoyable experience.
One of the things we discovered through this program, I think, talking to all the different sales directors, is how much the role of sales has changed and broadened. And I think that level of diversification has brought a really wide variety of different sorts of people into sales, which I think is wonderful. It's a very modern sales leader. It's very different to the traditional sales leader. I'm interested with my recruitment hat on. At some point, when you moved into sales, someone took an opportunity with you and looked at your capability, not your technical skills, and said, Eugene's not a technical salesperson, but he's capable enough to run this sales team. Do you think organizations sometimes still play it too safe despite that evolution when it comes to recruiting, and it's easier to pick the safety of experience over the potential of someone's capability in a role?
I mean, yeah, we talked about this the other day, and I'm definitely guilty of this. I think it's fair and reasonable for recruiting employers to want to play it safe, because hiring someone is so risky. It's a costly exercise.
Yep.
If you're on a growth trajectory, it can really slow that down. So I think it's fair to think that hiring talent that's got that experience, got that expertise, that track record, it's a reasonable thing to think. And I think it's a reality that's not going to go away. But I do think it's changing, and it's about the candidate being able to craft their story to spin their experience to suit this different type of role, this different function, things like that. I think I think it makes you a much more attractive employee if you've got that experience. So if you can get that broader functional experience, then you're going to be more attractive as a candidate. So, but I do think as well, it's more often as not going to happen internally. So it is. It's I guess the perceived risk of bringing someone from external without that experience at all. But internally, they're a tried and tested employee. They might not be a salesperson. They might be in procurement or something like that. And you go, and I think more than ever, organisational fit is what's looked for. The right behaviours, the right processes, and things like that. The soft skills. So I think if an opportunity comes up internally, like it did for me, you've got to grab it with both hands, because it is rare, and it is still a challenge for people to make that, or employers to make that challenge, take that risk. So if it comes up internally, take it. Take it with both hands. And if you're interested in it, make people aware of it. Just like we can talk about career conversations, making sure your manager, your manager's manager, HR all know that you're interested in broadening your career, because then when it's coming up, they'll think of Mike and go, hey, Mike's thinking of swapping over. And organisations want that too. The more they've got employees that have worked across functions, the more cohesive the organisation will be. So it's great for the organisation too. So I think I think externally as well, organisations sell that we move people around, and Mike's worked in 3 different functions and things like that. So I think if it comes up internally, you've got to take it. And like I said, supply chain, category marketing, they're all great sideways steps to build your soft skills for sales and broaden your career.
Agreed. I think fewer people think of supply chain, but I'm really encouraging of that. Not just procurement, but supply chain itself. There's a lot of components of that in terms of managing stakeholders, and that analytical piece, which actually talks really to the modern salesperson as well. So I agree with that. In terms of career conversations, you touched on one of the topics that Jonathan Morley at Nestle discussed was around his kind of, I guess, frustration with how people probably put a lot more work into their a category review or a customer meeting than they do for their review or their development conversation. How do you, from your own personal point of view, how do you prepare for that career conversation? Is it a meeting that you look forward to and prepare for, or is it or would you rather be in front of a customer?
I think well, it is hard. They're hard, and I know why people are nervous about it. But I don't see it any different than in a customer meeting. You have category plans, you have joint business plans with customers. Why wouldn't you have a plan for yourself? But it's easy to forget. You get so caught up in the day to day. And then you might have your family. Where do you fit time to do that for yourself? But it is important to take time throughout your career. You don't have to update your plan every year, and you shouldn't be too rigid about it. But you have to have a plan. What are you working towards, and how do you think you're broadly going to get there? And let it be fluid along the way. For whatever reason, it might have been the first job I had. It was a big organisation, and they made you write down what you wanted to do. And then subsequent things after that, MBA, they make you do that again. And so I've been fortunate to continually update my plan. and also be pretty clear on what I wanted to, where I wanted to get to when that's high school probably, and that hasn't changed. The fact that I'm in FMCG is different, the industry, but that hasn't changed. So I think you should prepare and like a negotiation and all those sorts of things. I think one of the reasons people are reticent to have a plan and to even be nervous about talking about it is because it's about yourself. It seems self-obsessed. It's very un-Australian to talk about yourself. One thing I did, which might be a bit extreme, but it was the way that I dealt with it from a tongue-in-cheek perspective. I wrote a page called "It's All About Eugene." It covers my purpose, what drives me, what gives me satisfaction at work, what things I don't like at work, my strengths, my weaknesses, and my career milestones that I'm looking to achieve. And I update it every few years, and every employer I work for, I give it to them. So it's been 3 managers now I've done that.
Right.
Straight up, they go, oh, wow, okay. You got it. And I soften it by explaining it's a bit of fun, but it's also, you understand me and you understand what I'm working towards. And it's been quite helpful.
Yeah.
I probably haven't updated it for 2 years. I was looking at it last night.
Yeah.
So, but it hasn't changed too much.
Yeah. Great.
The same, and certainly if I looked at it 10 years ago as to 2 years ago, it's very different. What satisfies me, like now it says, I want to be a good husband and a good father as my first two. What's my purpose?
Yeah.
That definitely wasn't there 10 years ago. Maybe good husband, but so it's different. But it should change. But I'm also, I think, very. I used to be so impatient about achieving those milestones. I looked at them last night. Like, I'm not quite on track.
Yeah.
That's okay. I've come to terms with that. With the impatience. And I think I was listening to Caroline's interview, same thing. As you get older, you've got to be less urgent.
Yeah.
Less urgent about where you're trying to get to, because it'll drive you insane.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Do you have people you talk to? Have you got mentors that you would go to kind of bounce ideas and sense check the career pathway?
Yep, I do. I think I've been fortunate to have lots of informal and formal mentors through my career, whether they're appointed at the organisation you're at. Sometimes it's great. I think it's great if it's a big organisation. They should have a formal mentoring program. It should be encouraged. You need someone to talk to that's not your manager. But then as I've got more senior, I've been involved in industry organisations, industry events, and you just got to be proactive and pick someone. I choose you. So and lean on those people. So I've had consultants. When I was at Steggles first going to FMCG, I had a consultant that was the vice president of that consultancy, and we seemed to build a rapport. So my last career decision, I lent on him a lot to help make that decision. And don't forget about your friends and family. There's people in your friends and family, personal life that will be great mentors throughout your life, but also at certain times. They may not always you consider a mentor and you have coffees once a month to talk about career, but they might have made a similar decision to you in some point, and then they can add value. And you if you're close enough, you'll know that they've made a similar decision and they'll have a lot of value to add. So I think mentoring is so important. I think I'm actually, didn't think of this last night, but I'm the chair of the mentoring committee for the Food Service Suppliers Association of Australia. So that was when I joined the board 3 years ago. We had a mentoring program, but that was my thing, that I felt that was a really integral part of and role of that association. We bring people together, and one of the most important ways to bring people together is to connect mentors to mentees. Yeah. So I've got several mentees, and I value that time with them, and I learn just as much from them as they from me. Yeah, reverse mentoring is quite the thing, isn't it? Well, they're spread across organisations at different levels. One of them, for example, is a business development manager, so they give me feedback of, like, I toss around ideas of how this would be perceived or what we're thinking of doing. Oh, that's a terrible idea. It absolutely is. It's a two-way conversation that benefits both. Well, feedback's important, right? And I think some people are more open to it than others in terms of how they receive it. But reflecting back, what's the best piece of feedback you ever had? I've had a lot of good feedback in my time. I'm sure I'm not the only one that said that. but I think one of so I'll try and do different things between advice and feedback. But feedback, perception is the real reality, and what that meant to me was it's not about the intent you had, because you might be a good person or you're trying to do the right thing, but think that extra step of how this is going to be received, and that then led to being transparent and communicating. So, and as you get more senior, that's more important.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter actually whether there's seniority or not. So being as transparent and as open and continuously communicating with your peers, your customers, whatever that might be. You might not have intended that message, but that's the way they received it. So perception is their reality. So that was a good piece of feedback I received, because I thought I was doing the right thing all the time, but it certainly was not the case in terms of the way other people were receiving it.
Yeah, good. What's next for you, Eugene, in terms of the career path? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, I mean, my I guess the goal objective is still to work towards general management and or a CEO role. So I guess ultimate responsibility. In my preamble, it talks about making an impact, and I really do think you can't make a much bigger impact than being the head of an organisation.
Yeah.
I think it used to be about wanting to be autonomous. I think that just doesn't happen. Never happens. You've always got a board or somebody that's watching what you're doing and wanting to understand what's going on. So that's become less important to me. It's about making a difference and making an impact. So that's still my path. But as I said, I'm not as impatient about getting there.
Yeah.
And I think what's changed as well, I used to think I wanted it to be the biggest organisation possible and things like that. I think I've come to understand what I appreciate about different types of organisations. I have to be in a growing organisation, a fast-paced organisation that's launching lots of products and exploring other geographic markets or looking at acquisitions. I really enjoy what the type of journey I'm on right now. It has to be a journey. I'm just not there to caretake. I'm there to make a difference, and the people that work with me have to have the same attitude. It's full of optimistic people and things like that. So, I want to be part of a story of change. So
that's cool. That's really cool. We touched on career conversations earlier, and in my experience as a recruiter, every interview I have, every interaction I have with a candidate or often with a client as well, is like a career conversation. Is about understanding their journey, but not that many I meet are super clear on their goals, are able to describe with a really clear narrative what it is that they want. And therefore, that I think they miss an opportunity by doing that. How do you think someone can build more clarity on their career goals and build a compelling, authentic narrative for that career conversation?
I mean, it's a good point. If you're turning up for an interview and you don't know why you're there, why that organisation, why that role is for you, then you're going to get found out straight away. It's often it's the first thing I ask, because it's about fit and do they understand what they're there for. So if you don't have clarity of where you're trying to head, or where you want your career to go, the interview is not going to start off on a good foot as far as I'm concerned. So and it comes back to the plan. You need to have a plan, and yes, it's about finding time to do it. But if someone doesn't have a career plan, it brings into question how planned they are in their job. So I think the skills are still all linked. There's plenty of people that I guess just roll along and rise to the top, but they're the few and far between. And when you meet those people, they are there for a reason, because they're so talented.
Yeah.
And other people notice them and then pull them along or identify the spots for them. But I think career conversations and interviews, it's about, you've got to take responsibility of where you want to go. It's up to you, and don't look to the organisation you're in. Don't look to others to take you there. People can guide you, but it's up to you. So I think if you have a plan, then you can work out how to summarize it and articulate it, and it should be as succinct as possible. And then craft your experiences from your previous roles that support that specific goal. Yes, you'll pick up lots of other skills along the way, but what are the things you've done that really support where you're trying to go? Because if you've picked the right role that you're going for, then that will be very relevant for that interview.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I think that's really good advice. Having a plan and being able to kind of articulate that succinctly is actually often a huge difference between what to me makes a great candidate and one that's coming to me looking for me to give them complete career direction, and that's not my job.
Yeah.
Happy to challenge,
yeah,
but I'd rather challenge the plan, and challenge assumptions. And the whole idea behind this program is actually to give a bit of inspiration, but also to help people build that plan by looking at others' careers like yours to see, well, actually, there's so many different pathways I can take here, and the plan has to be flexible as well. It doesn't have to be so rigid. Too, which is you touched on before. My ongoing frustration and the core purpose behind this program is to enable people to be better prepared to have that conversation, to make better decisions, so they can realize their potential. Way too many people get stuck in their career, and I look at them and I think, wow, you should have gone further. What's stopping you from realizing your potential? In your view, why do you think some people actually get stuck and others continue to move?
I think there's a bunch of reasons, but I think if we get back to that plan, but if you don't understand your purpose and what gives you satisfaction, if you haven't taken that time, I guess even if you do come up with a plan, it might not be relevant to you. You've got to truly understand why you want to go to work.
Yeah.
And that can help you choose the organisation you're going for, the roles you're going after. It might turn out you don't want to be CEO, but you really just want to be sales director, or just a really senior salesperson. But you need to sit down and work those things through. And then I guess the other point is you can't beat the right attitude and the right performance and the right behaviour. You might be lucky and pick up good jobs along the way without having a great track record, but nothing can beat a great track record. And eventually your reputation will precede you. So you'll get found out. It's about doing. You're in the role right now, doing it to the best of your ability, and doing it in the right way. Because I've met plenty of people that have got great results, but they've upset a lot of people getting there. So behaviour is so important as well. So doing it with integrity and respecting your fellow employees is just so important as well. So I think attitude and behaviour is really important as well.
Yeah.
So and then I think other thing is openness. So this is, I guess, about T careers and broadening your career.
Yeah.
You've got to be open to the opportunities that come your way. So if you're not closed down to the opportunity, that's not the next step. Think like you're encouraging this forum is to not be too rigid and think outside the box in terms of where your career could go. It's a long career. We've got to work for 45 years or something like that now. So don't worry about a few years working in a different function. It's going to make you better at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
on that point, the McKinsey T career, the broadening piece, some people are really open, but some people are reticent to take that role. What do you think holds people back? Is it just some people are better risk takers than others, or why do you think some people would say we don't actively pursue broadening roles?
I think two things. One, it's the risk that I won't be able to do that, the lack of confidence. And I think, like I said at the start, it's about identifying what soft skills you have that can translate. Like for me, from project management to procurement, it was really about, it's the task management and negotiation and those sorts of things, the skills that I brought across that fit. So there's if you're in sales right now, there's not going to be many other roles that you don't bring some skills to.
Yeah.
So don't have the confidence that you'll be able to do it. And they'll be there. People aren't going to lump you into the job without supporting you appropriately.
Yeah.
So, and then I think the other one is time. They're impatient and worried about that. There's not enough time to take a sideways step to broaden your skills base because you're slowing down your climb up the ladder.
Yeah.
as I said before, I think 47 years or something working, you've got plenty of time.
Yeah,
so,
I hadn't thought of it in years. You obviously it's the engineer and coming at you there, but
midlife crisis. Right
yeah, exactly. Are you tracking against your goals?
Yeah.
I think also broadening isn't just a functional thing. I think it can be working in different types of organizations. For instance, you're working in a smaller business. I think for somebody who's only worked in a big business, that experience is really interesting and contrasting, as well as if someone's only worked in a particular product category, whether it's for argument's sake food, then try beverages or liquor or experience life outside of FMCG as well in a more B2B type environment or services. I think there's lots of different ways you can broaden.
Yeah, true. Yep.
But I do think that there is a reticence still to do that for fear that you're going to become irrelevant.
And you're missing out. There's something going on over there.
Yeah,
that you're missing out on. But I think another way to look at it, given we're all sales and we're all marketers, think of it as so most people do follow a linear career. That's currently the way most people do.
Yeah.
So you're selling yourself against other candidates that have got the same set of experiences as you. So no one's different. It's just how you tell your story. If you broaden your career, whether it's in other industries, other functions, or things like that, you're creating a point of difference. So you're differentiating yourself from the next candidate. And if you, like we talked before, are good at if you can craft the story of why that broadening step has enhanced what you'll bring to that role, you'll set yourself apart and then have a better chance of getting that next role. And it's not getting less competitive these days. So if you look at it that in a traditional sales sense, you're creating a point of difference for yourself.
Yeah, I think organizations look for agitation. They look for change themselves at a strategic level, at an organizational level. And if your frame of reference is narrow, then it's very difficult. But if your frame of reference is wide because you've got different experiences to draw upon, then more naturally you're going to be able to agitate and change.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think FMCG is looked upon very, very favorably in other industries. So it could be a period in your career where you go to another industry and make a huge difference, make a big impact, because people are looking for the people that have worked in that fast-paced, very competitive environment. So there's opportunities out there people aren't aware of because they're so narrow focused on FMCG.
Yeah. A question we've asked each of our sales directors around vision, around connecting people to vision, being the leading attribute and across the kind of the many attributes we expect from our sales leaders. But in a business like Birch Waite, a smaller business, how do you as an organization connect your people to the vision of what Birch Waite stands for?
I think so at prior organizations I worked for, they were very structured and great at doing that. They had big forums, very, very rigid in the frequency and the format, and they did such a great job. We at a smaller organization do have those forums, but they're not as frequent or as we're not as rigid in when they happen. And I think that's a failing, and that we're so busy doing, we forget about sometimes the bigger picture, and that we might be very clear on what the vision is, but does everybody understand it? So that's something that we definitely is probably some small businesses don't do it well. But the difference is, so the positive is that I guess because it's the flat structure, the less layers, you're engaged with the CEO, with myself, and every day we're involved in conversations with multiple layers, right to business development manager and things like that. So they're the opportunities that we get the chance to remind that employee of what the vision is. We provide the contextual conversations to reinforce why we've made this decision or why we should do this, because it links to the vision. So not on a grand scale, but every day we see our responsibility to remind everybody of what the vision is. So so it's different, but I think just as effective.
It's probably more continuous than event led. Great.
Absolutely.
What about looking elsewhere? Have you seen other leaders or other organizations do a great job of that? And it could be through personal experience or something you just observed, in the world at large.
Like I said, at Cerebos, our CEO, the last CEO I had, he was supported by a very strong comms team.
Yeah, that's Terry.
Yeah, Terry, and he saw that as a very important part of his job. He, as I said, and it was everybody. Factory workers, everybody would go to a location at a set every quarter, and he would update the whole company. We knew as much as he could tell what was going on, and felt very connected. And I think he felt it was everybody's need to understand the vision. So he was very good at it. That was one of his skills of getting up there and presenting as well. So he was quite inspirational from that perspective, and supported by a strong team. So I think Cerebos did it well. And Terry was very good at it as well.
Yeah, great. Before we kind of go to we're moving towards the end, but a couple more questions. When you're recruiting, what impresses you about candidates and what can frustrate you?
Like I said, I think they've got to have a good, succinct narrative. They know where they're going and why they're there, why it's relevant to where they're going, and then a good set of examples that demonstrate why they can do what we're asking them to do, and it's believable, because some people craft stories that they played quite a minor role. So that sometimes the details, but not enough, just a sufficient detail to give you confidence that they played a leading role in that example. I think also the fact that candidates listen, so they're really listening out for the question. So they're very focused on answering that question and bringing those examples. One thing of many that frustrate me in interview is if the candidate's not listening. And usually I'm interviewing for salespeople. So if they're not a good listener, they're not going to be a good salesperson. So that's key as well. And some simple things, coming prepared. So as I said, knowing why they're there, but also set of questions. There's no way they can know, from as good as the recruiter might be, or the website, know everything about Birch Waite. So they're going to want to know some questions. So good, thoughtful questions that tie back to this role and to helping them understand why they should join. I think it's a two-way conversation as much as anything, and them being prepared for that shows that they're serious about the role, but also, again, I think they're going to be a good salesperson. And please take notes. I hate it when people don't turn up with a notepad and a pen.
Yeah, that's a practical one. Good.
It drives me insane. Yeah, we've not hired people over that, because they're just, how are you going to be a good salesperson if you're not, because it's back to listening, I suppose. So,
it's a physical demonstration you're listening. But I concur on the questions. As good an interviewer as I think I might be, or on my best day, it always amazes me that some people don't have questions. You're like, where's your curiosity? You must have something for me. It's completely agree. Cool. To finish out, as we do every session, before we go into open questions, we've got a few to get through, Eugene. What 3 pieces of advice would you give an aspiring sales director?
Okay. I think this first one applies to, wouldn't matter where you're aspiring to go, and it's going to sound like an old man, but remember to enjoy the journey. I think I don't know how many times I've been told that myself. You get caught up in looking to the future. Try and enjoy the present at work, in your personal life, getting balance, all those sorts of things. If focusing on work, if you're not enjoying, if you see this job, it's just to get me you're not going to do a good job, and you're not going to get there. You've got to enjoy what you're doing. So enjoy every day. That's one of the key pieces of advice, and don't be too rushed about the next day. I think I already touched on this, but I think behaviour is just as important as performance. I think more and more organisational fit is important, and so don't be a bull in a china shop. It'll catch up with you, and ultimately you won't be as good at your job because you won't get other people there. You need people. You can't do your job in isolation. Most organisations, it's collaborative. You need other people to help you get there. So eventually it'll let you down if you're not worried about the way you do your job, not just what you're doing. And specifically to sales directors, and I think of anyone that wants to progress, you've got to accept that you're going to have to work hard. Where are those people that just sail along and climb the ladder, just working 40 hours a week? So I don't think balance is the right word, but it doesn't matter. We're all trying to come up with new words. It's about fit. So fitting your life in with your work, and fitting your work in with your life. I think COVID's made that a bit easier for some people, the working from home piece. but I value being healthy and fit, and I think that makes a better employee as well. It makes you more optimistic, and I think one of the important attributes of a good sales leader is to be optimistic.
Yeah.
So being fit and healthy and feeling in balance with work and life helps you be a more optimistic leader as well.
Great, thanks. That's great. Got a number of questions pre-submitted that we'll go through, but guys, if there's anything that comes to mind, feel free to jump on the chat facility and fire something through. But I'll start with, this is a big question, but can you give an example or examples to share of when you were proud as a sales leader? And can you perhaps share a major loss or learning as well?
Okay. So you've heard this story. My proudest achievement is I took on Espresso Mechanics, which is the equipment sales and service of coffee at Cerebos many years ago, to lead that division. And it had been losing money and challenged as a business. And I think the perception was that the employees were doing a bad job. But largely, all of them were ex-technicians that were promoted with little training and support into leadership roles. But boy, they were good at their jobs, and boy, they understood the industry, and they didn't need much to support them to be good at those more senior sales and leadership roles. So all I did was turn up and facilitate and coach. I called myself the business coach. I wasn't their leader, and I just facilitated change through them. And more than any of the roles I've had, I've just leveraged their expertise and their skills. I never went and visited a customer. I had nothing to do with externally facing. I was just in the background supporting them, and they turned that business around, and it accelerated. It became very profitable. And just the pride they had for what they had done. Yeah, absolutely, hands down my proudest achievement and proudest moment. Yeah,
fantastic.
The other one, this is not a proud moment. I had a big customer of ours, and I think I put too much pressure on the employee to drive this customer and to get some outcomes, and I didn't spend enough time understanding the nuances of the customer. And that, I guess, that pressure that I put on that employee, they pressured the customer, and it had a detrimental effect on the relationship rather than a positive one. And in the end, we lost some business, and that employee left due to not performing well, but also unsatisfaction. And I think I played a big role in that. So as a sales leader, empathy and truly understanding the situation is so key, rather than sometimes, like, I guess, yelling from the gallery doesn't help. So yeah, that's a moment that I've got to adapt my leadership styles depending on the employee and the customer situation.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. What would you do differently if you had your time again? That's a big question. I don't know if that's a life question or that's about your career, but
I don't know if I would have changed much differently. I think I've been very fortunate that the Lady Luck has been on my side, and then I've been able to do things that I've enjoyed. I've worked with very close friends, things like that. So I've enjoyed my career so far. But maybe in the spirit of this conversation, I've had opportunities come up which are in other organisations, in other functions, that I've turned down because I was on my linear path. Now, yes, I have jumped around a bit, but I was too impatient to think that I could still take a few years out and going back into operations in a much more senior role, for example.
Okay.
And why I say that could be important is sometimes the organisation is just as important as the role. So an organisation can develop you just as much as the role you're going into. And it might get, well, that's a strange role for me to do, but boy, that company is amazing. Boy, they're focused on development and different things like that. And in reality, if they're focused on that, you'll end up falling back into whatever your true strength is anyway within that organisation. So I think a key in choosing your career path, pick your organisations carefully. Yeah. That fits with you, but also could provide opportunities, like I said, internally, because that's often where they're going to come from.
Yeah, great point. I think it's the organisation is probably more important than the role generally, but In Birch Waite, a small business, as we touched on a couple of times, everyone's dealing with COVID in a different way, but what tools are you using to overcome the challenges of COVID?
Look, it's where I listen to some of the other interviewees, not as good as those guys, but I mean, for us, we were very much a work in the office environment, and I think, and I wouldn't call it a tool, but we've started to work from home a lot more, and the Zoom and all those sorts of things, simple tool, but I definitely think it has changed us for the good, for the better, and for the future. We will flexibility and the flexible workplace. It's brought us into the 21st century, I suppose. But it's I think that's one of the biggest things that's changed Birch Waite as an organisation. So COVID has had a positive effect from that perspective.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of other tools I think we can say that we're using so well. So.
All right. One last question. We'll finish up. But who inspires you?
Yeah, it's a hard question. I don't know whether I get the definition of inspires right. I think I thought this long and hard, but I guess people that live their life in service to others, because I think it inspires in the sense that I just can't bring myself to stop what I'm doing to do that. So I've got friends and family that they make me want to be a better person, but to worry less about earning dollars every day and helping other people. So I've got mates that have sort of slowed their career to start men's health organisations. All my father has done his entire life is volunteered. Every week he seems to come up with someone else that he's helping, and people. I'm inspired by people that's what they do. Not rich billionaires that decide to be philanthropists, but people that have decided that's what value they can bring to the world. I'm quite impressed with and people like that. I wish I was more like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Great. Thanks, Eugene. That's awesome. Really appreciate your openness. That was a really enjoyable conversation. Thanks for sharing that. It's to everybody listening, I think it's given us another really good insight into another pathway to senior leadership, to sales director, and reinforces how each journey is different, and how many pathways there are that you can continue on. It's not just that linear step that we often, I think, focus on. So I hope everyone's now feeling a bit better prepared in terms of thinking about career conversations, and they're starting to kind of face into, when the time comes, making better career decisions, because that's the whole idea behind the program. That's the completion of season 1, guys. We're now going to take a 3-week break. We're going to come back with season 2 on Thursday, October the 8th. We've got another 6 sales directors lined up, which will take us through to Christmas, and can't believe we're talking about Christmas, but we've got some tremendous talent that we're going to be discussing between now and then. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to send out a survey just asking for your feedback, how you feel the sessions have gone. A lot of people have volunteered information, but I'm also interested in what else you'd like out of these conversations, because I think the access to people like Eugene and others is excellent. It's wonderful they're giving of their time, but we need you guys to ask us as well as to what you want to hear and what you'd like me to cover. So thanks again, Eugene. Thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great Thursday and a great weekend.